Right then, let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 2-on-1 Powerchair Football podcast powered by MK Battery. A huge thank you, as always, to MK Battery for powering this podcast and every National League live stream. And our continued thanks to Slater and Gordon, title sponsors of the National League for 25-26. And of course, Swizzles, who continue to recognise and celebrate standout performances and key contributors across every game week. Today's episode is all about game week 3 of the Slater and Gordon Championship, and what an incredible weekend it was. Big results, shifting momentum, and a table that's becoming a lot more clear. My name is Ryan Sipple, and joining me once again at this point, he may as well be officially listed as co-host, is Gregg Baxter. Gregg, welcome back. How are you?
Delighted. I think people might be sick of the sound of my voice by the end of the Premiership weekend this weekend, but delighted to be back on. Delighted to be recapping what was a brilliant week of Championship action.
Absolutely. And for the first time on the podcast, we're joined by Nottingham Forest's Ben Rogers. Ben, welcome to the pod. How are you?
I'm good. Really happy to be here, actually. Just talk about football, wheelchair football.
Absolutely. We enjoy these recaps a lot because it's good to shine a spotlight on those top performers, the fixtures, the shifts and changes in the table. And this is the place to do it. Now, I wasn't there this weekend just gone, and I was gutted for many different reasons, which we'll no doubt touch on. But even from afar, it sounded like one of those proper championship game weeks. It was a lot of tight games, big moments, storylines everywhere you looked. I had Gregg on the ground, feeding back to me regularly, making me jealous. But it's what it's all about. And the National League, certainly as we sit now, 25-26, it is for me the best it's ever been, which I'll come to you both on in a minute. But I've done everything I can to catch up, so hopefully I can provide insight and perspective from the outside. Gregg, you're in a unique position when it comes to these championship weekends. You're a Premiership player. You've of course got your ties to Teesside, but when you're there, it's typically on commentary, so you're watching it through a neutral lens. You're there to watch, commentate, analyze, and get a proper feel for how the division is shaping up. Give me your brief assessment of game week 3.
It was very interesting because it felt like a game week where a lot of the big teams were at their best. The teams at the top of the table, they were dropping points, but none of the other teams in and around them really wanted to make the most of it and capitalize as best they could. And you saw some teams from deeper down the table that have made transfers during the winter that have really kicked in and really made a difference. So a lot of what would you have said shock results coming into the game week, but at the end of it, they don't look like shocks whatsoever, and some would be saying they're good results. So it's set us up really nicely for the rest of the season, and I cannot wait to see where it goes because there are really big changes that have happened.
Absolutely. Ben, you're right in the thick of things. From your perspective, compared to 2 or 3 seasons ago, how do you assess the level of the championship now? Is it faster? Is it more tactical? Is it more unforgiving? Because from the outside looking in, it feels like the baseline standard across all 12 teams has just absolutely skyrocketed.
Yeah, I definitely think all the teams at the moment are really closely, like no teams are really beating other teams by that many goals. They're all really close, and that at any chance, any team can get a goal, change a game around, even from the top to the bottom. Like you see, the top teams are drawing with teams lower down. Just and yeah, it's just really quite the how well players are playing. They're all really close.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's almost a cliche, but on their day, I think anyone can beat anyone. And some of the results we saw from game week 3, that proved almost to be the case when you're referencing the likes of Hull and East Yorkshire, who were bottom at the start of the weekend, and Villa Rockets, who were chasing the title at the start. So we will no doubt unpack all of that. Before we get into the team by team recap, just want to acknowledge something very quickly. The BBC were in attendance filming a feature for their breakfast show and their social platforms, and that is absolutely huge. There's been a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes to get it to a stage where they can attend and access our players, our community, try it out. And I'm so happy that it's finally happened, and even more excited to see the final piece when it goes out, because the reach of BBC Breakfast is absolutely huge, and the spotlight that can put on Powerchair Football is pretty unprecedented in terms of scale. They get millions and millions of viewers daily. And if our feature lands there, there's no telling what that can do for the sport of Powerchair Football. It was a few weeks ago that David D and I met with the BBC to talk through the sport, the structure of the National League, what makes the Championship so competitive and so compelling, and the angles and stories that may translate or resonate with a wider audience. And straight away, you could see that they were impressed, not just by the quality of the sport, but the professionalism of it and the strength of the community that sits behind it. So it's a huge thank you to Erica Witherington, the BBC Disability producer, Nikki Fox, the BBC Disability correspondent, both of them for attending, taking the time to meet the players and the parents, properly getting involved and trying the sport rather than just kind of setting up a camera and getting a few shots. Greg, from your perspective, what does it mean to have BBC Breakfast at a National League weekend, and how important is it that when new audiences see it for the first time, assuming they've never done so before, they're seeing that elite level, the standard, the atmosphere, the quality of play?
It's really exciting, I think, because it just can bring so many new eyes to our sport, and that can only be a good thing. I think for me, the most exciting thing is, from a selfish point of view, is because I know how much Powerchair Football has affected my life and changed it for the better. Those people that are sitting there in a similar situation to Ben and myself, that are in wheelchairs and love football, maybe they don't even like football and they just want the social aspect, they will see a sport and go, that looks like fun. Everyone looks like they're enjoying themselves. They look like they are part of a community. I want to join that. And the more people we can show how wonderful our sport is and get more people involved and change their lives, the better. That's the most exciting thing for me, because yes, it can bring new sponsors in and attract more opportunities for us as players already, but it's the new players that are going to experience what we get to experience on almost a weekly basis now is what really excites me.
Yeah, that was part of our initial meeting with the BBC. They fairly bluntly said, what do you want from us? What do you want from a commission, a feature on Powerchair Football? Do you want the sponsors? Do you want increased revenue? Do you want the national spotlight? And I said, to be perfectly honest, what I want is that if you have a disability, if you're a young boy or girl that has a disability that isn't aware of Powerchair Football, I want to put it on your radar for those aspects that you've mentioned of the socializing, the leadership, the teamwork, the team sport aspect of it. And the WFA is in such a fantastic position now that should be the priority. We have a level of financial sustainability due to some of our fantastic sponsors and partners. So the priority absolutely now is just getting as many people involved as possible. So yeah, cannot wait to see it go out. We're working with them at the moment just to get a further piece added to it where they access a club's training. But hopefully that will be out in the not too distant future. So let's get on with things. As we always do with these recap episodes, we'll work our way through every team in the division, starting with 12th place and building up to league leaders. We'll look at results, points, momentum, shifts, individual performances, and we'll, of course, highlight the Swizzles award winners from Gameweek 3 as we go. There is now clear separation forming at the top. There's a cluster in the middle who could really be anyone on their day. And at the bottom, there are signs for progress, no doubt, but the reality of just how competitive this division is. So in 12th, we've got Nottingham Forest, 5 points from 14 games. And Ben, you're right in the thick of things here. It read as another tough weekend on paper. You opened up with a 0-0 draw against Leeds Dynamos. A discipline point. Leeds are sick. They've got real attacking quality, so to keep them at bay for 40 minutes takes organisation, takes work rate. Then came the two heavier defeats, 4-0 to Manchester United, 5-0 to West Bromwich Albion Baggies, and that's where the Championship punishes you, because 5 minutes of losing your shape, 1 or 2 mistakes or lapses in concentration, and the scoreboard can just seem to run away from you. And that is the ruthlessness of this division. Sunday brought another 0-0, this time against Hull and East Yorkshire, which on reflection, based on their weekend, is something you should be proud of. So that's 2 clean sheets across the weekend, and then a tight, narrow 2 undefeated GBG Saracens cap things off. A highlight in that one was your brother Sam scoring his very first National League goal. So congratulations to him. So if you strip everything back, it's 2 draws, 2 clean sheets, a positive, but it's also 3 games where you're just outgunned. And that contrast is the issue. The lack of consistency is the issue and has been for quite some time. Ben, give me your assessments because you're living it. What is not clicking for Forest at the moment?
I just think we're really, as a team, we're working together, and we've improved our ability to play with each other. We've definitely, we get good chances. We just not for long enough. Maybe we get 4 or 5 big chances in a game, and we're not really consistent. So if we can keep that consistency in a game, I think our defensiveness is quite good when we keep that shape. But we lose our composure quite often, and then that's like even for free, like a second, you can go down 1-0 and then you already feel like the game's gone. But as our team, the 2 draws we got, we were really happy, and we really we were in the fight the whole time. We had chances. It's just our finishing and clinicalness where we can get it up, but then we just can't get the final pass or the shot on goal to actually get us in the net, and we kind of struggle sometimes in the middle. Personally, I get stuck into dribble battles and I'm trying to get it out wide, but we just can't quite get the passes going.
Greg, give me your assessment. Is it consistency, to Ben's point, or is it maybe concentration, confidence, or is it just the level around them continues to rise?
All of the above. Can I just cop out and say all of the above? I was actually, you know what? The level continues to grow, and to Ben's point, Forest are growing with it. I was quite impressed this weekend, especially I covered their game against Hull and East Yorkshire, and it's obviously a completely different Hull and East Yorkshire to that the start of the season, and they know what the signings for Hull and East Yorkshire brought to their team. I thought it was a brilliant game. For a 0-0 between the 2 bottom sides of the league, it was actually a really good game of football, and they matched them really well. And like I said, defensively, resolute a lot of the time. So I think there is a lot of hope for Forest, and I think it just speaks to the level of the Championship, really, and how well teams are progressing and the level of football we're reaching, that they find themselves bottom of the table with only one win in 14. I don't think there's a lot wrong defensively. I think going forward, they just need that consistency of decision making and accuracy of the passes. I think is where they're slightly lacking, but they're certainly building to the point. And then it's just that clinical edge that Ben says they're maybe lacking at the minute, which comes with experience.
Yeah, and let's not forget, this is a young Forest side. I know Gaz Meakin slightly skews the numbers, but if you take him out of consideration, I think you're probably one of the oldest players, Ben. What, you 18 years of age?
19.
19 years of age. So when you think of Finley, Riley, Sam, these are 14, 15, 13-year-olds. So that it does touch on what Gregg's talking about with being experienced. And from the football that I watched in game weeks 1 and game weeks 2, particularly commentating, when you're on the ground up close with it, you are playing some of the best football I've seen you ever do so. But it doesn't necessarily end in goal scoring opportunities or goals being scored. And we know that's the difference between success and failure. I did a little bit of research on the historical trend of Nottingham Forest. And if we go back in 24-25, so last season, you finished in 11th with 11 points. In 23-24, you finished in 12th bottom with 4 points. 22-23, 12th again with 1 point. And 21-22, 11th with 1 point. So fairly bleak when you read it out like that. And over the last 5 full completed seasons, the points required to avoid the bottom 2 and relegation has been 14, 14, 14, 15 and 16. So you combine that up, that's 73 points across 5 seasons, which gives you an average benchmark of safety of 14.6 points. So let's say 15 ensures your safety for the championship. Across that same 5-year period, Nottingham Forest have accumulated just 22 points in total, an average of 4.4 per season. So it just simply hasn't been good enough. And the reason I say that is because it's almost been a repeating cycle. Forest have find themselves in that bottom bracket because as the championship works, you are technically relegated if you finish in 11th and 12th, and then you are encouraged or you have the option to re-enter the championship playoffs where you can re-earn your spot in next season's championship. And that is what Forest have done for the last 4 or 5 years. The problem with it is the championship isn't standing still. We've spoken about this. The mid-table sides are sharper. The top end is stronger. The point I want to make is the regional league teams are improving. The WFA VAR showed us that. So if Forest do find themselves in that playoff position at the end of the season, there's no guarantee it's as straightforward as it may have been in previous years. But to your point, Ben, yeah, we was just discussing this off air. This week, I've had the pleasure of coaching 3 regional emergent talent programs in the South, in the Midlands and the North. Yesterday, we was together in Stoke alongside 2 of your teammates in Finley and Riley. I've seen the talent up close. I've seen the hunger. I've seen the ability. I've seen you match the levels of some of the brightest young players in the country. The frustrating part for me is that confidence, that composure, that ability that you're showing them one-off development days and environments isn't consistently transferring international league fixtures. So for me, it's not a talent issue. The talent is there. It's a confidence thing. It's knowing and believing you can do something. And I think if you have that, you will be able to emulate what we've seen GBG Saracens and others do, struggle at the bottom, but really start to click as a collective and move up. So, Ben, what do you think needs to change? Is it that belief? Is it that cohesion? Or is it just kind of taking it one result at a time?
I think that as a team, we need to be more confident because we kind of feel more of pressure due to the occasion. And then we fall apart because we get stressed or we get we think we're going to lose. So we start falling apart and then we just can't play properly. We need to kind of just, when a goal goes in, just don't lose our heads, just keep going. And I think that's our problem. We get frustrated that we're doing stuff, but it's not happening. And then it kind of, as the game progresses, we start playing worse and then we concede a goal and then we feel that we've got no way back. I definitely think as a team, we've got the talent. We just need to hone that talent and kind of maybe as a team gel a bit more, maybe just talk about what's each other doing, what you think might be best to improve on. And then maybe if we can do that, we can use that to maybe improve.
Yeah, I completely agree. How has it been, that shift to having Toby in goal for the 25-26 season? Because us as commentators, as viewers of the championship, can see there's quality there, and the same case can be applied to Toby with the whole squad. He's a confidence player, and if he feels confident, he plays confidently.
I think with Toby, he's because me and Toby are actually quite good friends. We're probably two of the best friends on the pitch. We talk all the time, so we've got really good like communication. We're always talking on the pitch. We almost know what each other are gonna do now, which at the start of the season it wasn't the same. But once and me started gelling, and we started kind of making that connection. We've started to play well, but a lot of the time when maybe Toby concedes a goal, we concede a goal, we start getting like scared that we're going to concede another, and we probably lose our concentration for 2 seconds. And then if you lose your concentration in goal for 2 seconds, it's in the back of your net, and there's nothing you can do.
No, that is as we've already said, the ruthlessness of the championship division. One mistake, one lapse in concentration, and you will be punished. It'll be interesting to see how you fare in the remaining games of the season, because across game weeks 4 and 5, you do play the top 5 teams currently in the division. So it's going to be incredibly tough. I don't know whether it's a case of you put a lot of your efforts, if not all of your eggs, in the basket of the likes of GBG Saracens, Manchester City, Altrincham, teams that are kind of in the bottom half, just to try and get enough points to surpass them, and hopefully for yourself finish in 10th. Because as we sit here now, you're just 4 points off of safety. So there's not much in it. It just needs Man City to falter slightly, it needs GBG Saracens to drop off, and Nottingham Forest to go on a little bit of a run. But that is, for me, just as compelling as the race at the top. So that's Nottingham Forest in 12th. Let's go to Hull and East Yorkshire in 11th. They have 6 points from 13 games, and this weekend was incredibly significant and successful for them. They opened with a 1-0 victory over Leeds Dynamos, and that wasn't just 3 points. That was their first ever win over Leeds Dynamos in the championship. So what a great way to kick things off. And it was almost, for me, like a psychological barrier broken. Not just the win over Leeds Dynamos, but their first points of the season. We know they went through game weeks 1 and 2 without a single point to their name. And when you've been in and around the bottom for a while, those kind of moments can just light a fire. It was then a 1-1 draw against Villa Rockets Lions, a team at the time who were second, a side packed with quality, attacking threats everywhere. But Hull stayed composed. They didn't get stretched. They didn't fold under the pressure. Then 2 0-0 draws against Teesside Steel and Nottingham Forest. That Teesside Steel one particularly stands out because they are on a 30-game unbeaten run. So experience, structure, and Hull kept them out. So overall, there's not many negatives, unbeaten, and I don't know what the odds would have been for that at the start of the weekend. Gregg, from your view, give me your assessments. Incredible, no?
Yeah, it was really good to watch. And I think you can't not talk about Hull and East Yorkshire this weekend and not talk about the impact that the signing of Tyler McClellan has had on this team. And I mean that with the greatest respect to everyone at Hull and East Yorkshire, but he's just brought it to another level. He really did stand out this weekend as just someone that brings that quality. We saw him play in the Nations Cup in Italy back in September, for Scotland against the best players in the world. And now he's decided, you know what, I want to mix it right at the bottom of the championship and get really stuck in and take it to the teams. He wasted no time getting involved. That win against these Dynamos, he got an assist within 30 seconds. Welcome to the championship. Welcome to England, Tyler McClelland. How'd you like it? It was really good. He just brought out the best in the team around him. Anne-Marie Robertson got her first goal. It was fantastic to see. What amazes me about him is he just sits and waits. He has that composure to read the game. And he says, look, I'll let you pass because I know that one bad pass, I can spin on it absolutely like on a dime and I can generate so much power it's going back towards you. He just reads the game so well and has that composure. But yeah, they've really jumped up and put themselves in a fantastic spot. First win, first points, now only 3 off Man City in the safety. So fantastic weekend for them, and they'll be hoping that can continue going forward.
Absolutely, they will. Ben, I'm sure from a Forest perspective, it's frustrating to see them pick up momentum and see someone leapfrog you in the standings. What's your overall assessment of Hull and East Yorkshire? Because they were no doubt buoyed by the inclusion and the addition of Tyler McClelland, a senior Scotland international.
I think really it's similar to what Greg said. They have definitely improved loads due to Tyler McClelland joining. He just sees everything. He knows where everybody is, and one thing that I found really annoying about the way he plays is just when he takes free kicks, or not free kicks, or sideline balls, he takes them so quickly that you can't get set up, and you're lost and you don't know what you're doing, and then they get a ball across and they get a shot on goal and it's like it happens in seconds. So you need to be against him really concentrated at everything he does. You just need to make sure you know what's happening, and he reads the game so well. He knows exactly where you're going. He knows how to get the ball away from you, and he always sees the passes. He can whip a pass straight across the pitch to somebody in the back post, and they just put it in the net.
We said it on the last episode. The introduction of Tyler McClelland would make a difference. I didn't know if it would be this immediate, but he was an absolute game changer. And his ears might have been burning this week, actually. And Ben, you was there yesterday because his name come up multiple times when I was coaching on the RETP this week. And for those involved in the RETP, or those not for that matter, they focus on 6 key capabilities when assessing a player's competency, quality. And they are timing, technique, movement, positioning, deception, and scanning. And it's that last one, scanning, where Tyler excels. He is constantly assessing the situation behind him, around him. And whether it's the ball, whether it's the opposition, whether it's teammates, whether it's space, before he receives it, he already knows the picture. And that's why he looks so calm, so prepared, so ready. He's never rushed. And I set all of the players this week the homework to watch him, and other top central players for that matter. But with Tyler, because of his scanning, it's such an underrated part of the game, and it's what makes him the player he is. And we said, and I stand by it, Tyler is the most talented Scotland international. I'm sure some people may disagree and will want to put their name into consideration, but we saw it in Italy. Yourself and I, Greg, we watched every single game of Scotland, and when they put him in the centre, which they didn't do a great deal, he opened the game up. You said it, Ben. Quick set pieces, quick kick-ins, the diagonal switches he's able to get. Absolutely division leading in the championship, I'd have no problem saying. So you add that to a team struggling at the bottom, it's no doubt going to help them. But he just raised the standards. Credit to Anne-Marie Robertson as well. A goal threat, composure in the final third, experience at this level following her time with Manchester United. And all of a sudden, those 2 additions have just given Hull this incredible balance. They're on 6 points. They're still in that lower bracket. They still need to build on this. But the first time this season, they don't look like a side scrambling. They look like a side that's building. Now, I'm not naive. We're not naive. That uplift is down to Tyler, to do none of the other players a disservice, because his influence is huge. And the level of his performance is going to be needed now for Hull. They are reliant on him, both in the league and the latter stages of the Vars. I'm led to believe that he may not be there for game week 4 because there is a clash with the Scottish League. And if that is the case, Hull could suddenly find themselves back where they were in game weeks 1 and 2. Actually, when you think about it, in a more difficult position, because last season they had Aston Walls, who played in the centre. He's now since rejoined yourself, Ben, at Nottingham Forest. That leaves them without any established central players. So if they struggled in game weeks 1 and 2 when they had Aston, and game weeks 3 when they had Tyler, I don't know what the game plan is for game week 4. So we could see all of this progress go out the window, and it opens the door for the likes of Nottingham Forest. Is that fair, Gregg?
Yeah, more than fair. And I don't think Hull are that naive to that fact either. They're very honest and open about the fact that obviously Tyler did make a massive impact and was 90% of behind what they did this weekend. I think, you know what, Luke Brennan actually, as a goalkeeper behind Tyler, was actually alert. Was stable for Tyler. Sorry, whenever he obviously gets the powerful spins, there's always a danger that one ricochet and it's going back towards your own goal. So, having seen their regionals, Luke played middle for Hull and Shropshire. Yeah, so that'll be what will be going forward for them if Tyler's not available. But yeah, they've got an issue. That's understated. They've set a standard now that if Tyler's not available, they can't really reach without him. But like I said for Forest, I think Forest would probably say it's a good point actually against Hull and Shropshire, because they've seen what they had done to other teams before them and taken points off the top teams. And I thought they actually, to your credit, Ben, you equipped yourselves quite well against them and almost matched him a little bit.
Yeah, it will be an interesting one to keep an eye out for. If we assess game week 4, they have not only a 5 fixture weekend, but they play first, second and third across Saturday and Sunday. So if they don't have Tyler, them 3 games also complemented by Baggies and City, you would have them as the underdogs in all 5 of them, unfortunately. So we shall see how it plays out. But congratulations to Hull. Congratulations to Tyler. He was voted the unsung hero of the weekend, the Swizzles unsung hero of the weekend, which gives Gregg a little bit of a chuckle because he voted him as the standout and he was very close to being voted standout. I think his impact was so great that he got a lot of votes for all of the accolades, just like Hull and East Yorkshire did as well. So on a different day, on a different weekend when Manchester United weren't so dominant, we could have seen Tyler sweep up many of the different awards. Manchester City next in 10th, and this is one I don't think that the results at face value tell the full story, because they lost to Nottinghamshire 2-0, 2-0 to Baggies, 2-1 to Norwich City, and then picked up a 1-1 draw with Leeds Dynamo. So 3 defeats and a draw, 1 point added, and they remain on 9 for the season. Gregg, give me your assessment of Manchester City, because we watched them in the Vars a few weeks ago. They were fantastic, weren't able to come away with one of those valuable semi-final spots, but the influence and the introduction of Jack Humphreys certainly made a difference.
Yeah, much to my point about Tyler upping the level of Hull and East Yorkshire, Jack has upped the level of Manchester City. And I know the results didn't quite match it this weekend, but they certainly showed more resolve, and they did have trickier fixtures. So, Nottinghamshire top of the table, Norwich in 5th. I think they equipped themselves quite well and gave themselves a good baseline moving forward. I think for me, the key bit for Manchester City in their quest to avoid the relegation playoff is that goal difference. You know, Forest are obviously bottom with a goal difference of -29. Hull have got a goal difference of -27. Saracens, who are 3 points above City, have got a goal difference of -22. City have got a goal difference of only -6, which could, come the end of the season, prove vital in, them staying up and avoiding a playoff. So they're able to grind out draws that, for example, the two teams above them haven't done this season. They either win games or lose them. And when they lose, they don't lose by many. They are difficult to break down. I think Jack has brought that back with them, a bit more defensive stability.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their results now from across the season. Their most comprehensive defeat is 2-0. So they do not lose by a wide margin at all. And their identity has been grounded in that defensive solidity. It's typically been Jay Pixton, but bringing in Jack Humphreys certainly doesn't hurt things. Ben, give me your assessments from Manchester City, because they're a team right in and around you.
I think obviously City are very defense, but they can score. But I think, yeah, Jack Humphreys and Jay Pixton, their defensive ability is really good. And even before Jack Humphreys was there, Jay Pixton in goal, he was like a wall. You couldn't get by him. He knows where to put his chair to prevent you getting by him, and moving him out, maybe outfield, has actually, I think, been a benefit to City, because he can act as that maybe middle player or winger who's really strong with the ball, who can take the ball down the pitch, maybe make a chance out of nothing. But I think their defensive stability is one of their biggest factors in why they're improving and climbing up the table.
Yeah, we've said it on many occasions, but Jay Pixton is likely to miss the remainder of the season now, as he goes off for surgery. And over the past few years, or ever since Manchester City became a National League side, for me, I have Jay as their most consistent, influential National League player. Losing that hurts any side, but Jack softens the blow massively. And to your point, Ben, what I liked in Gameweek 3 was the experimentation with Jay, playing out wide, playing in a more attacking position, because it gives City a chance to let Jack and a new central partner build rhythm together. Because for the last 2-3 years, City have been exclusively reliant on Jay to anchor the middle and dictate everything from deep. And that dependency has to evolve now, as we're approaching the business end of the season and him not being available. So, no, really like that for Jay and Manchester City. Apologies for the repetition, but in the last episode, Gregg and I discussed Manchester City and Jack Humphreys more particularly, and said that had City made this signing in the off-season, he would have gone down as my signing of the season, not just because of what he does on the ball, but because of what he brings off the ball, the leadership, the tactical understanding, the standards he brings with him. And in years gone by, City have historically operated, I don't think it's unfair to say, with more of like a participatory model. They share the minutes, they share the responsibility, they even share the captaincy game by game. And sometimes that can be at the expense of momentum. It's been part of their culture, their identity. But what Jack adds is structure, direction, purpose, and clarity, I think. And I'm told he's already introducing things like video analysis sessions, Zoom reviews. He's tightening up all of the small details around National League weekends and their performances. And that's where the next step lies. Because if City want to be a consistent force in the Championship, if they want to push up the divisions, they're going to have to get rid of this title and this model of participation and start to go to performance, really start to excel. Because this division is unforgiving, as we've already discussed when referencing these bottom teams. So on paper, it's 3 defeats and a draw. But watching from the outside, speaking to the people, tracking the games, there's a different feel about them now, more intentional. And we've already said how narrow those defeats are. It doesn't take much for them to go to draws and then them draws to go to wins. So I think come season's end, even without Jay, they'll have more than enough.
Yeah, and that momentum is definitely changing. And we've said they're defensively really solid. I think my challenge to them now is, can you go on and score some more goals? Because they've only scored more than 2 goals in a game twice this season out of their 13. And that was against yourselves, Ben, at Forest, and a Huntley Shropshire side without Tyler McLeod. So that is where they need to not lose their defensive stability, but try and transition a bit more attacking wise in the last 2 game weeks of the season, just to try and push themselves, up the table a little more. So yes, they're not losing games by a lot, but they're not scoring a lot either. So they're kind of in that little bit of murky grey area of, we're doing one thing well, but we're really lacking at the other end.
No, and that's where I would challenge Oscar Spink, Seb Spink, Kareem Ali, Lucas Fezzer-O'Brien, Stephen Miller-Whittaker to raise their levels now. Because if City are to stay clear of that bottom 2, it cannot be reliant on Jack Humphreys. It needs to be collective. But no, it's overall positive despite the result. If we look at game week 4, they open against Teesside Steel. They will want to do the exact same as every other team left to play Teesside Steel and be the team that breaks this ridiculous unbeaten run. They then play Norwich and Hull and East Yorkshire. Depending on personnel, will be dependent on their kind of hopes and aspirations from those particular fixtures. And then Manchester United and Altrincham on the Sunday. So a busy, packed 5-fixture weekend with some tough tests, but also some really winnable games. In 9th, we have GBG Saracens. And for me, from the outside, I thought they were excellent. 2 wins, 2 defeats. But just look at who those defeats came against. Teesside Steel and Manchester United, 2 genuine title contenders. And that context absolutely matters. They started the weekend brilliantly with that 2-1 win over West Bromwich Albion Baggies. To go behind and then turn it around against a side with the level of experience and quality of Baggies is huge. And it just seemed to buoy them for the rest of the weekend. Ollie Grafton, full of confidence from the Vars, took that into the weekend. Both goals against Baggies really sharp, really nicely taken. Teesside Steel was a tough test, 2-0, but competitive. They weren't overwhelmed against a side that's now 30 unbeaten. And you measure yourself in spells, not just the score lines. And if you go for that former part, then they have more than enough with a little bit more experience, a little bit more know-how to really challenge in this division. I think you said it, Greg. Give them another 12, 18 months. There's no reason why, if they keep this group together, they can't really challenge towards the top. Against Manchester United, I think they actually led through Adam Sevenoaks, and it took a late rally for Manchester United in the latter stages of the second to come back into it. So they're competing against title hopefuls, teams that if they do not have that trophy in their hands come season's end, they will be bitterly disappointed. That has to give GBG Saracens confidence. And then they ended with a controlled 2-1 win over yourself and Nottingham Forest, Ben. So professional, composed, managing the game, 6 points, 2 strong wins and 2 losses to sides at the very top. Greg, has the conversation now shifted? Are we now beyond the point of calling them just kind of a development side and one that's really starting to settle?
Or yes and no, I want to say. Again, shock, I'm sitting on the fence. Yes and no. There's obviously aspects where, because they're all such a young squad, they're still going to be developing and still learning. So there's aspects that I'd like them to pick up, and they will pick up as they get older, and they should pick up that experience and that nous, because they're only one of 2 teams that have not drawn any games. They either win or lose. So you would like to see them turn some of those defeats into draws, at least, if we're being harsh. However, like you say, I had their opening game against Baggies, a very good Baggy side, who I was thoroughly impressed with this weekend, which we'll get onto in a minute. To go 1-0 down, first game on a Saturday, and then turn it around, showed real determination, real grit, and that was without Avery Bazemore, who wasn't there on Saturday. They showed real determination. They stuck together, and it buoyed them into the weekend. I had their game against Man United, where they will be honest with the fact that I think they had 2 shots in the first half. They were under pressure for a lot of it. Scored 1 from a goal kick, their own goal kick. Ball into Tommy Mickelson, flicked to Adam Selwich. A brilliant finish around Laura Evans. And their goal kicks are really good. They really know how to break a team down and get straight on the attack from their own defensive third. So that really impressed me. They just fell away a little bit against United, and they brought the quality of Liam Fitzpatrick on at half time, who's a proven Premiership player. So it was only a hat-trick from him that undid them, really. But yeah, really impressive. They play some really nice football. Fred Body at the back is a brick wall. I was really impressed with him. Not ashamed or not afraid to bring the ball out and drive forward, play a couple of passes into Mickelson in the middle. So yeah, really good weekend. They've got a 6-point gap to how many shorts are below them. They're 6 points off Baggies with the game in hand. The goal difference is probably what they want to improve going forward. But for such a young side to be playing with this bravery and this football, I think goes down to the coaching staff and their attitude themselves as players.
I think you're being a little bit harsh on them when you're talking about that Manchester United defeat, because you have to apply the context. And I would say with a degree of certainty, we'll talk about Manchester United later in the episode. I don't have them losing another game with their current squad. I think they're going to go on an unbeaten run now to potentially lift the trophy. So for GBG Saracens to go 1-0 up and it take the 26th minute for Manchester United to find a way back into it is nothing but a positive, even in defeat. The signs are so encouraging. Ben, you faced them. The scoreline in that was very narrow. Is that one you come away from really disappointed, or do you just have to give the flowers to GBG Saracens?
I think we felt it disappointed afterwards, because for the start of the game, we were managing to play quite well, but Fred bodying goal just couldn't get past him. I think we probably could have scored a couple had he not been there, because I think he was just so calm, composed. He could see the ball. He's a leader from the back. He's their captain, and there's a reason, because he's so calm. He tells he's at the back giving instructions to his teammates, making sure they have ideas of what they can do, giving them ideas. And I think even like the middle player Mickelson, the way he plays, he's really good at just keeping that ball and preventing you from getting any flicks. And then when you eventually you try and pass out, he flicks it back to his teammate, and then they get an attack. I think their attacking is very good as well. And the first goal they scored against us, it was so well worked. I was like completely lost. They passed it across, passed it back, and then it just went behind me, and there was nothing I could do, because they brought me out, and they just waited and then took the chance when I was lost. So I think with a bit more experience, I think they definitely can be a team that probably even in the next couple seasons, I feel like they could even get a promotion chance.
I don't disagree at all. I've had the majority of the Saracen squad this week at one of the various RETPs. First time I've properly worked closely with a lot of them in that sort of environment, and I can see how good they are. I can see how high their ceiling are. They are still raw. There's no question about that. Their decision making at times, their game management at times still needs developing. but the technical base is so strong. The hunger there, the coachability is there. I'd love to work with them on a week by week basis, because they are just sponges for information. They ask questions, and as I said, the signs are incredibly encouraging. I'm so glad people are starting to become aware of Fred Body, because I've been banging his drum for a very long time, ever since he started in the National League. Highlighted him through the WFA Vars to the point where I was telling Gregg to keep an eye on him, because he is brilliant. Not too dissimilar in the way he plays the Jay Pixton. So hard to break down, so hard to bypass, controls, dictates from deep. But with him, his distribution is excellent at breaking the lines, finding the space. That not only relieves pressure on his defence, but creates opportunities in the wide areas. And had Avery Basing-Ball been present on Saturday, they maybe could have got a little bit more success. But I think they're starting, like City, to settle into a more established team, whereas before it was more participatory. They would switch things up completely at the halftime break. Now I think they like the fact that they can play Fred Body, play Tommy Mickelson in front of him. Then they've got Adam Sevenoaks. Then they've got Ollie Grafton. Classification's a little bit of an issue, because I'm sure they would absolutely love to play Tommy Mickelson and Avery Basing-Ball together. But knowing that Fred Body is needed, he's essential to that operation, it just prevents them in National League from doing so.
A couple of points to that point. We saw how good they are when they play Avery and Tommy together at the Vars, because classification wasn't enforced at the Vars day, and that's why they looked so good. Yeah, Fred Body was excellent. I mean, I text you, didn't answer every time he did something well. All I could hear was your words on the Vars recap podcast, going how well he's doing, and he really is just a rock at the back, and they formed such a great partnership. And yeah, that Man United game, they defended really well. They had to repel wave after wave of United attack in that first half, and they did so pretty comfortably. To be honest, I called that game. It was a cracking football, probably the best one I had of the weekend. It was just brilliant. They were so brave. They were not fazed by the fact that Man United had won every game so far coming into that one, and with the quality of their business. So they defended superbly well and showed experience beyond their years. It just, like I said, just fell away in the last 10 minutes when Fitzpatrick got a hat-trick. So you can't really fault them. They'll be thrilled to have taken the lead and held on for 25 minutes. So yeah, they are a really exciting, really, really young team, one to watch, because to Ben's point, they are, give it a year or two, they'll be sniffing around that playoff spot, if not always by the promotion. The limit really is endless for them.
To that point, I just want to preface to say there is no need to rush anything. I think if this group stick together at this stage of your development, minutes matter, consistency matters, repetition matters, and naturally, the nature of football, when you perform like this, people notice, and there will be eyes from higher end championship or even premiership squads. That's inevitable. But right now, please prioritize minutes, prioritize development, prioritize building something together, because this group, playing regularly, staying together for a couple of seasons, that is when you will see success. And for me, this weekend wasn't just about 6 points. It was about them announcing themselves as a solid championship outfit. And that's within 3 weekends. Not just 3 weekends playing as a squad within the National League, but for the majority or the lion's share of these players, the first time they've ever experienced a National League season. So they're still such young talent at the very start of their journey. If we assess game week 4, it's never easy They play Nottinghamshire League leaders to begin with before yourself, Nottingham Forest, Ben, and then Teesside Steel. So a jam-packed day on the Saturday, Norwich City and Villa Rockets Lions on the Sunday. But the goal will be clear. Just get enough points to put a little bit of buffer between yourself and the danger areas, and then reset in the off-season, ready for 26-27.
I've just had to remind myself, you said that this is only their first season. Actually, I've just had to sit back and go, actually, Greg, park yourself a little bit. Only the first season, they're 3 weekends in, they're on 12 points. They're 3 points away from that average point of staying up and win the playoffs. So scrap everything I've just said. You do really well. Take it easy. You enjoy it. Your development is key. I think I'd like to treat it as a compliment that I'm expecting so much of them, because from what I've seen in the first 3 weekends, but I have just had to sit there and go, my word, it's only their first season. Relax.
It's why I challenged you on your slight doubts and your slight negative comments. But absolutely, there's a few teams, there's a few players now that we hold in a higher regard. We assume they're more experienced. We assume they should be achieving more because the eye test almost. We see how good they are. We see how good they look. But wear it as a badge of honor that we're expecting you to do better things now, even after 3 game weeks, which is pretty remarkable. Let's now progress on to 8th. We've got West Bromwich Albion Baggies on 18 points from 14 games, and I think this was a really significant weekend for them. They opened up with that 2-1 defeat to GBG Saracens. Now, that was frustrating, no doubt. They took the lead. They were in control for spells, and they just didn't quite manage the key moments. We've said that lapses in concentration, mistakes will be punished, and that's exactly what GBG Saracens and Ollie Grafton did. But that happens in this division. But after that loss, they didn't spiral. They beat Manchester City 2-0. They beat Nottingham Forest 5-0. They beat Villa Rockets 3-0, which is a serious result given where Villa were sitting coming into the weekend. And then their only other defeat was a tight 1-0 against Manchester United, which I think he was watching. I've just clipped a goal for social media, Greg, which you can elaborate on, but very tight, very tactical. But zooming out, that's 3 wins from 5, 9 points added, and a side that looks like is really starting to gel. Greg, before I get into individuals, what did you make of them this weekend? Are we starting to see that formula settle?
I was so impressed with Baggies this weekend. Seriously impressed. I mean, had it not been for Man United winning 5 out of 5, they'd have been my team of the weekend. They were just incredible. So you see the West Bromwich Albion DNA in this team now. This is a weekend where they went, you know what? Yeah, we could play the way that the West Brom first team do. And I've just remembered that I covered the Man United Baggies game. So the statement I made about Man United Saracens being my best game of the weekend. Baggies Man United was unbelievable. 1-0. It took a brilliantly well-worked team goal, which I'm sure you can see on the social media from Man United. But the pass and moves Baggies put together in that game against Manchester United were exceptional. They tore Villa Rockets Lions apart. I don't want to go to individuals already, but Noah Stevenson-Lee was just exceptional in the middle. Strong on the dribble, but his passing abilities are ridiculous in that Baggies side. They made a slight tweak, putting Sam Swinger in goal after that Saracens defeat, and he was rock steady. He saved the penalty in that Man United game early on, keeping it in 0-0. Just provided a real stable base. And then Stevenson-Lee, Gowder and Marshall, it was mainly that started, were just on another level. They're on the same page. Front bump pickoffs. You can see that the influence that, Chris Gordon was there on the Sunday, but Dave Lewis and Matt Gilbert had coaching them. You could just see the West Brom DNA said oozing through this team now. And I mean, Jack Westmoreland made the team of the weekend, and he didn't really start many of the games. He just came on and scored goals for fun, got a couple of assists. They've got Noah Harvey, who again came on and showed a lot of impressive ability. Amy Sherman comes on now and just mops up all the danger that they need to when they're in the lead, keeping that clean sheet. I've really, like I said, I can't speak highly of them this weekend. They thoroughly impressed me, and they'll be looking to the teams above them, that 1 point off Altrincham, 2 off Dynamos. And you think about it, they're only 5 off Villa Rockets, Lions and Norwich City in 4th and 5th. They could really finish this season strong and use this as a benchmark going forward.
Ben, you was sadly on the receiving end of a 5-0 defeat to West Bromwich Albion Baggies in game week 3. The most comprehensive defeat of your weekend. Talk to me about that game. Talk to me about some of the players that Gregg's just referenced. How good actually are they?
I think, especially like Noah Stevenson-Lee, Jack Westmoreland, and any of the other players that on the team, they all were playing really well. They managed to get the ball from the goal kick all the way up in seconds. They had passing. When I was dribbling against Noah Stevenson-Lee, he's really hard to get by. There was only a couple of times I could actually get by him and get a pass away. He took me all around the pitch, and he still managed to win the ball sometimes, and just he got it, and then he would just be calm and play it beside me, and I couldn't really do much. And Jack Westmoreland scored in less than a minute. We got kick off. I think we kicked it down, and they got it straight away. Kicked it up. Jack got it, and then he smashes it behind the net, in the net behind us. So I think their passing was really good. Noah Stevenson-Lee's just knowing where to pass, knowing what to do, as probably one of the main players in their team to get those goals. But all the players in the team played well. Their goalkeepers, everything, they were really hard to break down.
Yeah, just to complement what you two have said, Noah Stevenson-Lee is a sensation. He genuinely has everything. So strong in the dribble, excellent ball striking, links defence and attack seamlessly, understands the space. The list goes on and on. The only thing he needs now is self-belief. The realization that despite his relative inexperience, he's already one of the best players in the championship and one of the strongest players on the Regional Emergent Talent Programme. It was his first day yesterday on the RETP. His first ever RETP. And he came in like a duck to water, absolutely excelled. And he also featured in the Swizzles Fantasy Team of the Weekend for the 2nd consecutive game week. He was 1 vote off securing Standout Player of the game week. So it just shows the level he's playing at. Jack Westmoreland, as you've already said, featured as a substitute. That tells you something about his influence. He's been utilised in various positions, particularly now with Noah very much claiming that central role as his own. So on the RETP, we're working with Jack on refining his game out wide, playing in reverse, being brave with his pickoffs, connecting with Noah and the alternate winger, and he did that really well. And in game week 3. But for me, Jack Gordon was just as good as both of them at the weekend. He will naturally be disappointed to not feature in the fantasy team of the weekend, but for me, that doesn't really matter. He's maturing into a really confident, rounded player. It was the 23-24 season. He finished on 15 goals and 5 assists. He was riding an incredible wave. Then he had surgery. He missed the majority of 24-25. And only now, I think, are we really seeing his confidence improve again, because he's so versatile, can probably play in any of the 4 positions on the court and do a solid job. And I don't have any problem saying, across the 32 players we've had on the RETP this week, I thought he showed some of the most encouraging development. I love him as a player, but I want to see him push on and surpass the potential we saw back in 2024. So yeah, overall the Saracens result will sting, but this was an incredibly successful weekend. And also a big shout out to Dave Lewis and Matt Gilbert. I'm intrigued to get your thoughts on this, boys. West Brom's an interesting dynamic because depending on who you speak to, some view the three National League sides in Albion, Throttles and Baggies as kind of separate entities. Others see them almost as a ladder, a progression model through the levels. And I'm sure in reality it's a little bit of both. But we see players come and go all of the times. Baggies players stepping up to Throttles, players moving up to Albion. Sometimes it goes the other way. So more often than not, all three sides are rebuilding in some capacity. And that continual change makes finding rhythm and long-term cohesion incredibly difficult. And that's always been the case with Baggies. Last season, Baggies were trying to balance the minutes across 8 players. And that just simply doesn't work unless you have that participatory model that we've referenced, where the only task of the coaches is to just share the minutes, irrelevant of aspirations, irrelevant of form, irrelevant of tactical approach. We've already established with others that momentum matters, partnerships matters, repetition matters. This year they've slightly trimmed down their squad. They're carrying 7, which personally I think is probably one too many. But in game week 3 they found the balance, and the rotations, the substitutes, the changes, they all felt purposeful rather than forced because you felt you had to get minutes in the squad. So credit to Dave, credit to Matt, because they've now put Baggies on the radar. And whilst I don't think they'll have enough to make up real meaningful ground up the standings, because there's not that much football left to be played, come next season, assuming they keep this squad together, there is no reason why they can't emulate what the likes of GBG Knights or Muscle Warriors have done to really challenge for the title. Don't you think, Gregg?
Yeah, that depends on movement elsewhere in the West Bromwich Albion system.
Of course, it always does.
Yeah, to me, so I'm one of those that views it as a ladder model. Your West Brom, obviously, first team Albion, second team Throttles, third team Baggies, and I know they've got a couple of teams below that, and it's worked. You can't deny it hasn't worked. Whenever a player leaves the first team, someone from Throttles more often than not gets promoted, and then someone from Baggies gets promoted up to Throttles, and so on and so forth. They take the players from their regional league teams and put them into Baggies. And the model works because you can see that this Baggies team is playing really good football in the West Bromwich Albion DNA that all the players are buying into and using to their benefit. This weekend, they played some outrageous football that I think would have beaten most teams in the division, and they'd give a good game to some of the bottom teams of the Premiership. And that's not me getting too caught up in the hype train.
I hate to remind you, Gregg, but when we was previewing the WFA Cup, I said West Bromwich Albion Baggies have a very good chance of beating Premiership opposition Sevenoaks, and that fixture is taking place, I think, next weekend. So not this weekend coming, next weekend. If they play the way they did in game week 3, there is no telling what they can do against Sevenoaks. The same advice I gave to GBG Saracens, I would give it to West Bromwich Albion Baggies. There will be eyes, there will be suitors, there will be conversations about where you're playing your football next season. Ensure that is to your benefit, that you're going to thrive, you're going to play minutes, you're going to play consistently, because everything we've spoken about matters. And the likes of Jack Gorder, Jack Westmoreland, Noah Stevenson-Lee, they're destined for the Premiership. Destined. And I don't actually know if they can currently get promoted because of the rulings around established teams within the Premiership. Obviously, West Brom have those two sides already. It may be an exception for Baggies because the ruling came in after they was already an established team, but it's something I'll have to have a look at. But the future's bright. There's no question about that. Game week 4, they play Hull and East Yorkshire, Manchester United, Nottinghamshire, and Leeds Dynamo. So 2 very winnable games. That bookend the middle games against Manchester United and Nottinghamshire, first and second in the division. Now let's progress to 7th. And Altrincham PFC. They came into this weekend knowing they were facing 4 of the league's top 5 sides in Norwich, Teesside, Nottinghamshire, and Leeds, or some of the top sides. Really tough run on paper. No easy fixtures. No almost reset games. But they were brilliant for me. They came away with 3 draws, 1 defeat. They opened with the 0-0 against Norwich City. That was really organised. Norwich applied the pressure, moved the ball well, tried to stretch them, but Altrincham, as they often do, holding their shape brilliantly. Then it was the 4-1 defeat to Teesside Steel. And if you just read that scoreline, you probably missed the story behind it. I think it was 0-0 until late in the first half when the deadlock was eventually broken. Teesside then finding their rhythm and punishing in the second half. It was Sunday where I was more impressed. 0-0 against league leaders Nottinghamshire, really disciplined, and then a 1-1 draw against Leeds Dynamos, who had dominated large spells before taking the lead just before half time, but Altrincham stayed in it and found an equaliser. So 3 draws against top sides. Gregg, when you look at that fixture list and that return, more importantly, does it feel like they're punching above expectation, or maybe just operating at their level?
Yeah, I think they're operating at their level. I think for me, they are a really solid outfit, defensively especially. They're really hard to break down. Teesside Steel only got in because of a penalty and one of those indirect free kicks that takes a nick off a goalkeeper and goes in. I recently found out the goal doesn't go to the free kick taker, so that's something you learn something to do every day. It was my mistake on the stream. But yeah, there's one of those.
Repeat that ruling, sorry.
If it's an indirect free kick, obviously it has to touch another player. So, for example, in the Teesside Steel game against Altrincham, and Jamil Khan took the free kick, it took a nick off of Jake Hudson in the goal, went in, and I gave the goal to Jamil Khan. And at half time, rightfully,
it's not rocket science.
Yeah, I wasn't really awake at that point. I don't think. I think I might. It was at the game I had 2 iPads. Now I don't think it was a game I had 2 iPads for, but I was just on autopilot. Gave the goal to Jamil Khan and was like, "We'll talk about it." Rightfully got a little bit of a stick from the referees at that point for playing the game so long and not knowing the rules. But yeah, they're defensively really solid. A team of J's. It was quite fun on commentary, pretty much. But yeah, they were just able to frustrate. That game was Nottinghamshire, especially. They had to dig deep towards the end. Nottinghamshire threw pretty much everything at them. So they have a really solid base. Goal difference of only -1, 1-5, drawn 4, and lost to 5 games. They're just one of those solid middle of the pack, happy mid-table teams that can, on their day, give the top teams a run and comfortably beat the teams below them. They're just in that little groove.
They're certainly a challenge for commentators. Jack Johnson, Jack Hassan, Jake Hudson, James Simpson. It's a real tongue twister. Yeah. Ben, they're your first game of game week 4. Talk to me about how you assess that fixture, because they are so tough to break down, to Gregg's point. Is that one you think you can win, will go in hoping to win, or maybe a point will be a good return?
I mean, I know we played them in the cup actually recently, and we had a really good start against them. We actually went up 2-0, but they then after that we couldn't get back in, and they put 4 past us and beat us. So they are a very good defensive team. I think the introduction of Jack Johnson is really, especially in the middle. He's good defensively. Especially, I was commentating on the Notts Altrincham game, and Notts had so many chances, but just that defensive pairing of Jake Hudson and Jack Johnson, they were just so hard to break down. They managed to limit openings for Notts. They may have not got that many chances themselves to score, but I think as a player from Nottingham Forest, we're playing them first game. I think we would like to try and get something out of it, but I think it will be very hard to score. I think both teams, them being really defensive, us being really defensive, I think we'll be lucky to get anything out of that game because they are very good in their defensive and they are very good at attacking when they get those passes moving.
Yeah, I completely agree. Talking about personnel is what fascinates me because David D, when they were formerly Sale United, left in the summer. Mason Davies in the winter break moved to Manchester United, and yet here they are. They're still structured. They're still competitive. Jack Johnson, only his third ever National League weekend, thrusted into that central role. That's the responsibility position. That's the position that wins or loses games. But he looks comfortable. He looked calm, organised, mature beyond his inexperience. The relationship he now has to build with Jack Hassan is key. Hassan operates almost as a second central player, that defensive winger hybrid. And that connection between middle and defensive winger is what has defined Altrinchem's success and their balance in the last 2-3 seasons. James Simpson has also joined them from Manchester City, a really smart addition, experience from City, understands the level, brings a bit of composure and possession, has scored some of City's most important National League goals, so we'll no doubt be looking to replicate that with Altrincham. And for me, when I think about Altrincham, when I was doing my notes for this podcast, I can't help but think of a team like Brentford in the Premier League over recent seasons. If you think of the departures of Ivan Toney, Brian Mbeumo, Johan Wissa, Christian Norgard, all leaving, big names, big goals, big characters, and people naturally just assume there'll be this huge drop-off. Instead, the system, in both cases, have just absorbed it. And that has been Altrincham. They do not panic when they lose players. They recruit smartly. They recalibrate. And they continue to be one of the toughest teams to break down in the entire division. I don't think it's unfair to say they're not overly spectacular. They're not flashy, but they're effective. They're still in the WFA Cup, whereby they'll face Newcastle United Foundation. I don't think anyone will really give them much of a hope in that one, but I would encourage them to just enjoy the experience, test yourself against top level Premiership opponents. And so whilst 7th might look mid-table on paper, I think it was an incredibly encouraging weekend, well clear of any of the jeopardy spots at the bottom. So now just focus on upskilling James Simpson, upskilling Jack Johnson, working with the likes and the established players of Jake Hudson, who I have spoken about so many times on this podcast. Massive fan of Jack Hassan. And just see where the rest of the season can take you. Obviously, I think they're scheduled to play Newcastle in the Cup at the start of March, and then game week 4, 2 weeks later, they play yourself, Nottingham Forest, before Leeds Dynamos, Villa, Rockets, Lions, and Manchester City. If all 4 opponents take the same form from game week 3 into game week 4, you would have Altrincham favourite, believe it or not. So even now, they could see themselves going on a real run and having a record finish in the National League. That concludes Altrincham. Next in the standings, we have Leeds, who remained 5th on 20 points. But this felt like a weekend that just drifted for them. I don't think that's unfair to say. I hope it's not unfair to say. They opened with a 0-0 draw to Nottingham Forest, one they'd expect to win. Then suffered a narrow 1-0 defeat to Hull in East Yorkshire, which is probably a result that stings the most given Hull's position in the table. Without all the context that we're weaving in, it was a disciplined 0-0 against league leaders Nottinghamshire that followed, which shows their structure, their defensive organisation. Sunday brought a 1-1 draw against Manchester City, a game where they again had moments but didn't quite impose themselves, and then they closed with another 1-1 draw against Altrincham after conceding late. So 4 draws and a defeat, not necessarily a collapse, but no real momentum either, with just 2 goals across 200 plus minutes of football. Ben, you faced them in game week 3. That was one of your successful ventures. Give me your assessments.
Leeds, their defense again is very good. They're very hard to break down, especially with Liam Chadwick in the middle. He can get a ball, spin it, get it to the wingers really easily. He's very strong in the dribble. And he just takes that ball and he can pass it out wide really powerfully, get those spins in really small angles. And I think there was one point where I was in the middle and he looked like he was going to spin one way and it went the complete opposite way, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I think, and the wingers, both very, very good wingers. They get those pick-offs, and I think it's just they couldn't quite get the final touch in the net against us, and it looks like that happened with most of their games because they didn't get a win, only draws. So their defensive stability, they're very good at stopping goals, but I think they just need to improve on that final finish.
Greg, did you manage to catch any of their games on comms?
Yes, I had the pleasure of the 0-0 draw with Nottinghamshire last game Saturday, which I'm politely going to say was a defensive stalemate. That's my polite PC-ness way of describing the game.
What is your wider assessment, having assessed the form, the results, the table, etc.?
Ben summed it up pretty well there, to be honest. Defensively really solid. Just can't really create much. They didn't create much this weekend. Going forward, scored a couple of goals, but really didn't consistently threaten and press enough. Like I said, I guess Nottinghamshire was defensive, the ground out at that point. One of those games where you kind of knew 0-0 was coming from pretty early on. It lacked a lot of quality. It was a typical Saturday afternoon, last game of the day game. Again, not wanting to dog that fixture too much, but I want everyone to understand what I went through on commentary with Gregg, to say the least. But yeah, really strong defensively. Chadwick is just a really strong player in the dribble. Having played them at regional league level, I know that. But generates a lot of power on the spin, so you can't give him any space. They just need to work on going forward. It's a bit of a transition because obviously they've changed coaching staff, lost Jack Humphreys. They had the Jack Humphreys derby, if we're going to call it that. I know he does, so I'll let him have that little moment. Drawing 1-1 with Manchester City, so they're in a bit of transition now, going from Dan Rigby and Lewis Harris and, guns to the walls, 4 out. We're going to try and score loads and attack loads to slightly different style under Paul Gorman, so we'll see how that affects me going into the rest of the season. But comfortably mid-table, if essentially.
Yeah, whether it's a pre-season preview, a game week recap, or kind of a general assessment of Leeds Dynamos, I more often than not find myself talking about consistency or lack of consistency. In 24-25, they finished 6th. In 23-24, they finished 4th. In 22-23, they finished 5th. So they're almost permanently positioned in this middle bracket of the championship. They are competitive, they are organised, they are tough to beat, but they're never quite able to break into that top three and sustain it. The Jack Humphreys departure, to your point, Greg, has probably had a bigger impact than most people think or anticipated, because so much of Leeds' rhythm over the last few seasons has been built around that pivot pairing with Liam Chadwick. And the way the two of them controlled tempo, recycled possession, built from central areas was heavily reliant on that pairing. With Jack now at Manchester City, Lewis Harris and Dan Rigby stepping back from coaching, it's been like a double shift, both on and off the court. Rhys Stewart has had to adapt his game significantly, stepping into more responsibility centrally. And at times, whether that's the first pivot or the second pivot, that's not a small tweak. Certainly, if the majority of your minutes of football have been played out wide. And it was when I was assessing the squad, which I've got up alongside me here, it's only now you realise how heavily Leeds are weighted towards wide players. They have quality, they have energy, but that central spine isn't nowhere near as balanced as it once was. So the likes of Rhys Stewart, they're learning on the job. And we've spoken at length now for nearly an hour and a half about how unforgiving this division is. Greg, when a system has been built around one or two central figures for multiple seasons, how hard is it to re-establish that control in the middle of a season?
Yeah, you're almost looking for like a temporary botch job. Not a botch job, but a temporary like fix to try and get yourselves through the season, develop and use a little bit of experience, Rhys Stewart having to play in the middle a little bit, give a little bit of taste of what is potentially to come over the summer. Then you want to get through the season as best you can, obviously still giving everything you've got and relying on what you're good at, which I think is where it comes to with Leeds, and they know they're seriously good defensively. So they're going to rely on that going forward for the rest of the season. But you know what, if we can't score many and create from that central pivot, we're going to make sure we are seriously difficult to break down. And that's something that they're going to have to rely on, because they need that period of the summer now to go, right, where really are we? What do we want to do, going forward? Looks like, again, we're going to sit in that, they could drop as far as 8th if Baggies and Ultra keep it going, but we're in that sort of 5th to 8th sort of corridor of uncertainty, if you want to use one of those sort of cliches. But you do have to take into context and go, they're in a period of transition, so it's going to take some time to get used to.
Ben, from your perspective, I know you play a lot of your football in the centre, but when that central security hasn't been there, and I'm referring to both the central player and the goalkeeper, how much does it affect your confidence in your own role, knowing that you don't have that established pairing behind you? I know you've shifted significantly in recent seasons, going from Jack Bosanquet, Toby Maurice. How much value do you have in that continuity?
I think knowing that the person behind you is going to have that stability, be there, like me and Toby, he knows that when I'm coming back at goal, I'm going to go straight behind him and I'm going to protect that goal line. And it's just good to know we have that, like, we know what each other's doing. And kind of, I know I'll shout if I'm coming at Toby, I'll go, I'm coming round, go out, take the ball away. If I'm behind him, I'll scan, tell him, like, there's somebody on the right, try and take it down the left. I try and really trusts me and I trust him, and it's I think me and him trusting each other has changed our ability to kind of keep that ball out, and I think our defensive ability has definitely improved since that new pairing and that we trust each other. So I think with Leeds, having that pairing between a defensive goalkeeper and middle defensive player is really important to prevent any mistakes from happening.
I don't think it's an understatement to say that the central pairing completely defines the success or failure of a team. And if you can look in the Premiership, you can look across the Championship, the successful teams are the ones that have that core 1-2. And the ones that struggle are maybe the ones that rotate and are still trying to find that formula that proves successful. But to your point, Greg, Leeds aren't in trouble. They're not spiraling. They're still organised. They're still difficult to break down. But this was a weekend where they needed to maybe assert themselves. And if they're going to break the pattern I was referencing of finishing 4th, 5th or 6th, they have to rediscover a consistent central identity that probably isn't going to be in 25-26 because they're 8 points off 3rd and have a tough run in with games against Manchester United and Teesside that await them in game week 4 alone. So no, intrigued to see where they go, how they build, who they upskill, to see how they fare. Now let's progress to 5th in the standings. We have Norwich City, who were riding a real high off the back of the Vars, progressing to the semi-finals, confidence flowing, good feels around the group. And I was really keen to see how that translated into the Championship. But it didn't necessarily translate. It didn't necessarily carry over as we may have expected. 0-0 draw against Altrincham to begin. 1-0 defeat, narrow 1-0 defeat to Manchester United is far from a disgrace. Then it was the 2-1 win over Manchester City, before a 3-0 defeat to Nottinghamshire, which is actually their widest margin of defeat all season. And that's important because almost all of Norwich's wins and losses, for that matter, tend to be by a single goal. And we said it in episode 46. I see them as the benchmark in this division. Nobody has an easy game against them. They're competitive every single time. They drag you into tight margins. They force you to be clinical. But just 2 goals across 4 fixtures this weekend. And one of them, I think, was effectively an own goal, which tells you something. So Tom Burnett didn't hit the score sheet. Johan George didn't hit the score sheet. And if Norwich are going to compete at the top end, they need those players converting chances in the box. Greg, give me your assessment.
Sorry to sound like a broken record, but it's another one of those teams that's just solid. You know, the Championship's full of those teams that are just, like I say, a benchmark. Like, you know you're going to get a tough game, but you can also, if you play to your level, especially if you're one of those top 3 or 4 teams, you can beat them. And I don't think there's any disrespect to Norwich. It's certainly not meant that way, because coming from the Vars and how well they played and the hype we had potentially on them going on a little bit of a charge towards the end, didn't quite translate, as you said. They struggled to really get some sort of fluidity into their game. At times it was there, but they just seemed to fall a little bit short. And they don't often concede loads. It was a game where Nottinghamshire actually were clinical, and finally put to bed the chances that they'd created across the weekend. So another team that is now 5 points off the top 3 and those promotion places, with room to develop, with the likes of Tom Burnett and Johan George is still developing. I thought, to your point in the Vars recap, Hannah Murgatroyd was excellent, especially in that defeat to Man United by just 1 goal. She made numerous last-ditch key saves to keep it at 0-0 for as long as she did. So that was credit to her. But yeah, just another one of those teams that is just solid, but needs to take that step if they're to really test the teams at the top.
Ben, you caught a couple of their games of commentary, and they're of course an opponent in game week 4. How do you assess them?
From seeing them, the Man United Norwich game was the one that I commentated on. They managed to keep Man United out of their flow. They stopped passing lanes. They were very good at preventing Man United from getting those passes around, and their defence, especially with their goalkeeper, Murgatroyd, I think the saves they made were really, and they gave Man United a game, and they could have scored maybe 1 or 2 goals, but they just weren't quite. Man United's defence were slightly was too good for them, and I think they're a good team. And I noticed from playing them in the Vars, the 2 goals they scored against us were both free kicks. So I think their set pieces are very good, and I think if they get a set piece against you, they're very likely to score. I just think maybe their open play scoring, they rely too much on the dribble. I noticed Coleman especially, he stopped people getting past him, but he would always take it on the dribble. He would try and get a pass if he could, but his preferred way was to dribble past them and get it up the pitch. So I think maybe relying less on dribbling and maybe get a couple more outfield goals, not into open play. I think that would help them definitely improve.
Yeah, I completely agree with that assessment, Ben, because for me, I think they've just lost a little bit of firepower. Game week 1, they were brave, they were expansive, they were taking the game to their opposition. Since then, they've almost reverted to that familiar, compact Norwich dribbling shape, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's disciplined, it's effective, it keeps them in games. But that slight reduction in bravery is turning fixtures into stalemates, into low-scoring contests where the margins go against you. And it has been frustrating to watch, because watching them in that opener, I thought, this is unlike anything I've seen from Norwich before. To your point, Greg, just like I was banging the drum of Fred Body, I'll continue to do so for Hannah Murgatroyd, because we're almost mentioning her without really unpacking it. She is such a brave goalkeeper. In preparation for this episode, I went back and watched some of the Norwich City games. I know you two were calling the one against Manchester United. She doesn't hide in her box. She comes out, she intercepts, she recycles play. When Norwich attack, she hovers around the halfway line, almost in like a 4-out fashion, which you just wouldn't associate with Norwich City. In game week 2, in the game week 2 recap, I said to David and Mason at the time, I need to see her taking more set pieces and kick-ins, because she's clearly the best for me, the best dead ball striker in the team. And in game week 1, they used her for that role and had so much success. Mike Coleman is more than comfortable dropping in as the most defensive position when required, but they've reverted to Mike taking the majority of those dead balls. And I can't quite understand that, because all the evidence is there to say and show that they're more dangerous when Hannah is driving their moments. I'm probably going to contradict myself, but Ben, when they scored those 2 set pieces against you in the Vars, who took the initial set piece?
Mike Coleman.
Mike Coleman took both of them.
Yeah.
There's no doubt he's a good dead ball specialist, but I think Hannah's better. And I'd love to see her be used in a more attacking sense, but drop back in. She can play almost like a Chris Gordon type role, where she's really beneficial and utilising attack as much as she is defence. There was one instance where the ball broke to her as the most defensive of the 4 Norwich players against United, and she 180s it into the side of Johan George's unbelievable control. And it had both of you speechless at the time, but it just highlights what she does, that she's so comfortable. And I don't think it's something as a coach you would encourage your players to do the 180s or the 360s as the most defensive, but she does it, and she does it fairly effectively. There's not often a time where the ball bypasses her and rolls into an empty net. Greg, do you think Norwich have played a bit safe since that opening weekend? Have they just tightened up a little bit too much, and now probably automatic or the title is out of reach? would you want to see them just be really brave, irrelevant of what the scoreline says?
Yeah, because if you're going to take a step to, you want to get back into the Premiership, you want to develop, and I think you've got to be, context is Tom Bennett's first season. You're going to have to start playing more attacking and more aggressive. So, they are obviously nowhere near any danger of going down. They're only 5 points off Teesside Steel. Yes, they've got a game in hand. But I think you've just got to just try and take the safety off. Just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? You lose a couple of games of football. What's the best that can happen? You gel and start playing some really attacking football, and you build for either a late challenge this season or next season. You know what? This is what we're going to do for all 5 weekends. This is our plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're a solid side. If they want to close that gap to the top 3, they just need to rediscover that game week 1 bravery. They need Tom Burnett and Johan George firing. They need to be more ruthless in the box, and they need to use every weapon they've got, including Hannah's delivery, because in this division, small tactical decisions make very big differences. Next in the standings, we have Villa, Rockets, Lions in 4th. And in terms of title push, there's no point sugarcoating it. This weekend was fairly catastrophic for them. 4-0 defeat to Manchester United, a 1-1 draw with Hull and East Yorkshire, 3-0 loss to West Bromwich Albion Baggies, and a 2-1 defeat to Teesside Steel. 1 point from 4 games, 2 goals scored across the weekend, a weekend in which that I know, speaking to some of their players and coaches, they wanted maximum points from. And at this stage of the season, that has all but ended any realistic hopes of catching the top 2. And if we're being honest, it may even severely have damaged their chances of securing that 3rd place playoff as well. So a lot to digest, a lot to consider approaching game week 4. Gregg, talk to me about Villa, Rockets, Lions, because we saw them in the Vars. It didn't go their way, but we knew there was without Naglis. We knew there was without Ellie, and we just assumed they would be back to their usual level, competing in the National League.
Yeah, you can't really sugarcoat it this weekend, can you, for Lions? It was poor. They'll accept that. They did in the social medias. So it was really poor by their standards. Never got going. Never looked like getting going, to be honest. And to the point you made about Leeds Dynamos and being a team full of wingers, is this a team full of wingers at Villa Rockets Lions? They are missing Mason Hindley massively. Naglis is a world-class winger, and he is a good middle player, but he is not a middle player by trade at all, and has done so, I think, very well this season up to this point. It just all came crashing down around them. The lack of training time that comes with the international players, as we touched on in the Vars recap. The curtain just fell around them this weekend. They'll be bitterly disappointed. They're still within an outside chance, I think, of a 3rd place playoff spot, by virtue of the fact that they're 6 points off Man United, and they've got a game left. But form-wise, you'd say Man United are absolute flying, and they're going to look towards the title rather than Villa Rockets Lions looking like they're going to catch them. So, yeah, this weekend really curtailed any of their sort of hopes for this season.
Yeah, I think what it exposed, again, in a slightly different manner, is the reliance on one player. And we spoke about it after the Vars, the difference when Naglis is in the side versus when he isn't. When he plays, Villa tend to look dynamic, aggressive, unpredictable. When he's missing, or in the case of game week 3, contained or nullified, opposition sense vulnerability. They sense frailty. And this is the weekend we saw teams capitalize on that. nothing Villa tried seemed to stick. The rhythm wasn't there, the cutting edge wasn't there, and structurally they looked incredibly fragile. And if we go back to last season, I would have said with confidence that had Naglis not missed game week 5 of the 24-25 season due to that clash with the senior home nations for Ireland, I genuinely believe Villa Lions would be playing Premiership football right now. They were that close and the margins were that fine. That didn't happen. They had to go again in the Championship, but this time, arguably, without their most important player, Mason Hindley. And to be fair, they rode a lovely wave in game weeks 1 and 2. Naglis returning, Ellie slotting in seamlessly, Tanvir in unprecedented form in front of goal, King, Collins creating and dictating tempo. Everything was working. The only way was up. But game week 3, it all come crashing down. And what surfaced were issues that have lingered for a while in terms of friction, inconsistent training availability, key players departing over recent seasons, and perhaps a system that still leans too heavily on one particular player. And when you're chasing promotion, you need robustness. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gregg, but when we was talking about Teesside Steel in episode 46, I said very clearly that players win games, squads win titles, cups, competitions, and sadly, Villa Lions is not a cohesive squad at the moment. Ben, I want to bring you in here. Have Villa become too reliant on their international quality to maybe mask structural weakness?
I think I play them, obviously, because I play in the West Midlands Regional League. I play them when they don't have Monty Villas or Ellie to be there, and they don't get much training together. So with that, I feel when we played them not in the Championship, sorry, they have been weaker, and we have played better due to that. I think it's the same thing with the international players. They don't get to train with them, so they don't gel. They don't have confidence as much in each other. Maybe it's slightly different because I don't actually don't put it. Yeah, they just don't gel. You need to be training week after week for somebody to really trust them, know how they're playing, know what they're going to do. And I think they don't have a real middle player. Monty Villas is a very good player, but I think same with Gregg about, I just don't think they have the stability to go forth and win a title.
No, I agree. Let's once again discuss international players coming into the National League. And I want to be clear, this isn't aimed at any one club or division, because to my calculation, across the National League, if we include Scottish players, have either, I think, 14 or 15 non-English internationals across the 24 National League clubs. In the last few days, unless you've been living under a rock, you would have seen Zach Dickey announced as a signing for West Bromwich Albion in the Premiership, which has created a huge buzz. Valentino did the same in 2024. We've seen it across the whole National League. Big names come in, the spotlight grows immediately, and there are obvious positives. The standard lifts, the profile of the league improves. That part is absolutely undeniable. But the harder question that I'm going to throw to you two is whether the positives always outweigh the negatives, because it's not just about match day availability, it's about training, it's about cohesion, integration, consistency. And when players aren't consistently linking up with squads week to week, whether that's due to geography, international commitments, or other factors, it inevitably, as shown with Villa Rockets Lions, affects chemistry. And then there's the development side of it we've spoken about. You've got young players who commit every week. They train, they play regional league, they travel hours for sessions, they turn up to cup fixtures, they build those relationships, and then on National League weekends can sometimes find themselves displaced because an international superstar is available. Now, that's the reality of elite sport. Whether it's Powerchair football or running game football, you pick your strongest side, but it does create friction. It does create internal challenges, and it absolutely influences long-term player development. Greg, where do you stand on it? Are international additions a clear net positive for the division, or do you think the negatives for on an individual level at clubs and developments slightly more of a consideration?
When done right, it's excellent for both team, league, players, you name it. Because the player coming in, you look at West Brom, for example, bringing Valentino, Zagarelli, now bringing in Zach Dickey, high-profile players from further afield that can raise the profile of the sport, raise the profile of the league, raise the profile of the club and the player, etc., etc. When balanced. So I know, for example, that as we record this, West Brom are playing a behind closed doors friendly with Villa in preparation for the weekend. That gives Zach Dickey some time to play a Premiership team, a good Premiership team at that, get used to the level as best he can for the weekend. So they're clearly going about it in a smart way. They've got him over. Obviously, it's a little bit different, whereas because he's so far away, he's not traveling to and from, unless you're Ben Key coming all the way from Australia, because you like doing that, flying to and from. They're able to have him on base and for a week or so to get him to training. But Villa, it just feels a little bit different. Like they've not tweaked the right stuff. They're not developing players perhaps in positions of need, because I think anyone could look at the squad at the start of the season and go, who's your pivot? What is your creative angle here? Who's going to be the person that dictates it? Yes, Naglis can do that, but then you're taking him away from the wing where he is one of the world's best. So it's tough. When it's done really well, it works well for all parties. When it's not managed correctly, it can have some disastrous effects, because the players that are there in training week in, week out go, what's the point? Or can start thinking, what's the point? Because I'm doing all the effort. I'm not going to play, because rightfully so, you play your strongest four. And also, if you're doing the training, you've got corner set pieces, corner routines, kick-ins, you've got moves you work on. That then gets disjointed when someone that hasn't trained and doesn't know the move and the routine comes in and goes, I need to do this now, but I don't know how to do it as well. So it can get really disjointed, and they need to have a serious think going forward about what they want to do and where they want to go, because when it doesn't work, it unravels, and it unravels on the likes of Tambit Hussein, who in the first 2 weekends looked like he was going to set goal scoring records ablaze.
Ben, does it raise standards? Does it raise the profile, or does it cause issues? Does it unsettle rhythm?
I think one of the teams that I think stands out to me, which have done it well, I think Hull, with bringing Tyler McKellen in. I think before they had him, they weren't really having many chances getting up the pitch. They didn't have a brilliant middle player, and I think him coming in has completely changed the team. He's made a very big difference. But that's me. I think with Hull, they didn't really have a middle player. They had to get a player in, and that he's not really replacing anybody. So I think he still doesn't get to train with them. And I think, like we said, he might not be available. He's not going to be available next game week. How that might affect Hull, I think, because he's not training with them, because he's not going to be there. I think it probably assembles the team, so they're not going to play as well. And I think that's quite a big effect that having international players has. If they're not there, then the team might not feel as confident and maybe not play as well.
For me, I think Hull share a lot of similarities with Roller Rockets Lions, and it worries me that they're so reliant on that firepower and that quality that when you remove it, there hasn't been that effort to upskill someone else to fill that void. If I was to be pushed for kind of the gold standard, the best example, immediately I'm drawn towards Middlesbrough and their Scotland internationals in Thomas Pettigrew and Ethan Galloway. I don't know whether or not they train, but there's no expectation for them to come in and play every minute. They have to earn their spots in that squad. And that being said, that's the Scotland internationals. And relatively speaking, when we're talking about Zach Dickey coming from the United States of America, we're talking about even Naglis Monvillas coming from the Republic of Ireland, Ben Keat coming all the way from Sydney, Australia. Scotland is a stone's throw in comparison. It still asks a lot of those players to commit the time, effort, and energy to come down. But the Scotland internationals are almost an exception to the rule. But to your point, Greg, it's not a black and white issue. It's really layered. It's really complicated, and the league's profile is growing as a result of these players. But one thing I do want to talk about is looking at this from the perspective of a player competing outside England. Because there can very quickly, and I think it's the reality now, becoming an unrealistic expectation that in order to truly excel, in order to reach the next level within your development, you have to play in England. Because this is widely regarded as the most competitive, the strongest league in the world. But the honest truth is, the only players who are fortunate enough to have the time, have the financial resource, have the flexibility, the logistical support, can commit to something like this consistently. So I kind of take Valentino Zegarelli and even Zach Dickey out of this conversation because they're in incredibly fortunate positions. We know that regular travel, accommodation, equipment transport, even for us in England, is challenging, let alone some of the demands that it requires of some of these players. It isn't cheap, and that is where it creates a really unstable dynamic. You end up with pressure on families, pressure on young players, and almost a feeling that if you're not in England, you're behind, which simply is not true. I assure you, anyone that listens to this podcast, we know we get a lot of viewership from the home nations, young players, not just in this country, but far and wide. And it's something that absolutely needs to be considered when we talk about international movement into the National League. The opportunity is brilliant. The exposure is brilliant. But the wider consequences, the competitive balance, the financial strain, the player well-being, that matters just as much. So it's a debate that we'll continue to talk about on this podcast. We'll continue to work with as an association to try and get that balance right, because it is a grey area. There is no right or wrong answer, but the onus and the responsibility is on the clubs to create these cultures, to create these environments that firstly prioritises player development of the ones that are committing to training. And then if you can sprinkle in some international stardust into that, by all means do it. We have seen teams do it right, but for many, they get it wrong, and it creates a really unstable environment.
I think for me, I've always viewed Powerchair Football, and it's switched as I've become an adult. As a kid, it was like the be all and end all. It was everything in my life. Everything was Powerchair Football Central, and it still is now. Because I volunteer my time to come down and help. But where I've become an adult, and one had university and life go on, and two started paying for these weekends myself. Wasn't the bank of mum and dad anymore. And I turned adult and went to uni. I've realised, the sport is for most people an expense. It's an expense, and foremost, you want to be getting the enjoyment out of it for your for the money you're putting into it. That's always been my baseline now is, am I enjoying my football? Am I making sure that the thing I'm doing is the thing I love still? So for those people that are listening outside of England and going, almost thinking pressure of, well, if I want to make it, I've got to be playing in England. You don't. Enjoy your football, for starters. That's the basis of any development, is if you're enjoying yourself and not putting yourself under the pressure, you're going to develop. That's the baseline. So don't feel like you need to come and play in England, because, you know, the teams that are out there that have won World Cups, the last two have been France and then USA before that. So there's the standard of football elsewhere is growing increasingly all the time. We saw that in Italy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm just trying to almost play devil's advocate in this situation and look at it from the other side. But I will preface to say some of my favourite players, some of my closest friends have been international players. So I want to see them have access to those opportunities without question. But the balance needs to be right. Now let's progress on to Teesside Steel in third, 28 points from their opening 12 games, still unbeaten, still relentless, still one of the most difficult sides in the entire division to play against. 8 wins, 4 draws, and not a single loss, a plus, glance over, plus 16 goal difference, and crucially, 2 games in hand on Manchester United in second and 1 game in hand on Nottinghamshire in first. As we record this today, gents, the 19th of February 2026, their last championship defeat was on the 8th of September 2024. That is 528 days ago. That is nearly over 12,600 minutes, nearly a year and a half unbeaten in this division. And yet, remarkably, they are still chasing and have never finished a National League weekend in the promotion positions. That as a stat blows my mind, because their unbeaten run far surpasses the length of an entire season at 22 league games. If we assess Gameweek 3, they opened with a really assured 2-0 win over GBG Saracens, a result that needs context because Saracens were coming off the back of a really strong run, full of confidence, and Teesside just controlled it really professionally. Then came Altrincham. Teesside were the only seed team to beat them this weekend. Everyone else found them compact, organised, stubborn, but Teesside found a way through, and fairly emphatically as well. 4-1 that finished. Sunday brought one of the slight frustrations, a 0-0 draw with Hull and East Yorkshire. Credit to Hull, they were structured and disciplined, but if Teesside are honest, that's 2 points dropped in a title race that will no doubt be bothering them now. And then Villa Rockets Lions was a 2-1 win to cap things off. For me, this was actually one of their more complete competitive National League weekends so far. I thought they were a little more clinical, they were a little bit more ruthless, less frantic, more deliberate. And as we've already said, Nottinghamshire sit on 31 points from 13 games. Manchester United 29 from 14. Teesside are on 28 from 12. If they win their games in hand, they go level with Nottinghamshire at the top. They'd still have to swing the goal difference by 15 to make up the ground, which of course will not be easy, but they face both of them in game week 5. So there are direct opportunities to change this narrative, change this story. The challenge, however, they finished the season with 2 5-game weekends. That is demanding when every match is decisive and the teams around you are playing reduced schedules with more recovery time. That surely becomes a real factor. Ben, give me your assessments on Teesside Steel. Do they have what it takes to win this division, or is there still question marks?
I think they definitely have they will definitely have ability to win the league. I think it will be a little bit hard with the teams they've obviously got above them, very well rounded teams. I think their defense is very good. They concede very little goals, and they can score lots when they get their passing moving. With Jamil, it can hit those balls really hard with centre player and all the other players. They all know what they're doing. They all defensively are good. They can make the passes. I think they maybe have a little too many draws to maybe win the league. But I think if they want to, they can definitely get in those playoff spots and even maybe come second or even first. I think they definitely could. They've got the squad to do it. I just think maybe you said they got 2 game weekends, and those 2 weekends are about 2 weeks apart. It's between game week 4 and 5, I think, or maybe 3 weeks. So it's a very small like turnaround time if they maybe have quite big schedule, maybe tiring, because they've also got into the Derby Arena, but that would be afterwards anyway. But I think they definitely have what it takes to win the league or even second place, get promoted.
It's not just a fact of them having 2 5-game weekends, it's the opposition in those 5-game weekends. The likes of Manchester United, Nottinghamshire, Villa, Rockets, Lions will surely have the bit between their teeth in game weeks 4 and 5 to right the wrong of game week 3. So there's a lot of intriguing stories. Gregg, you are, of course, very heavily associated with Teesside Steel as a result of where you play your Premiership football. Tell me, what makes them so hard to beat? How have they gone on a 30-game unbeaten run?
Welcome to everyone's favourite segment. Gregg balances Teesside bias with journalistic integrity. Here we go. They're just a really well-drilled unit. They just have a quality, especially, Isaac Murray in goal, Oscar Margaret in the middle, Jamil Khan at wide. Those are 3 of the best players in the league, with the additions of, the efforts of Tom Nett and Charlie Connolly as that sort of high 4th winger. They just have an innate trust in one another. They're good communicators, and they just get the job done. They see out games. I think that's what it is. They've got the experience to see out games. Maybe they're not playing their best. They still can grind out results. To take it into this weekend, to counter Ben's point slightly, if we could have a bit of a debate, say about too many draws. If they win one more game, they match Nottinghamshire's record of 13 games played, 9 wins, 4 draws.
Just quickly there, that has always been the question mark around Teesside Steel. It's something that we spoke about in the VARs. It was a theme across the entirety of last season. They were so good in game week 3 that it's kind of it steadied that and taken that almost out of consideration, because as we look at it, 4 draws from their 12 games is, as you said, is the same as Nottinghamshire, unless the Manchester United above them. So they're starting to turn those tight, narrow draws into 3 points, which is an observation and a change from game week 3, definitely.
And then it's just the argument of they've got 2 games in hand, which is obviously a bonus, but you've got to win those games in hand, or at least get results in them. So would you rather have points on the doors and play more games, or would you rather have a similar amount of points, maybe a bit less, but have games in hand where you can catch up? So they've gone into this weekend, done their job diligently. They'll be disappointed with the whole result. I know they were. They're balancing chair problems. Jamil's chair's been cutting out a lot recently. So they had to manage that because they've not got a big squad. As you said in the VARs recap, that could be an issue. They're missing 1 to 2 players. So they're in a really strong position. I know they're not getting ahead of themselves as best they can. They're keeping themselves grounded. They are a real threat this year to go up, if not as champions, in second place. And failing that, they'll have a more experience and a better chance in the playoff.
Yeah, I did heavily caveat my pre-season prediction of Teesside lifting the championship crown by saying Owen Swift needed to be involved consistently. And if he was, I'd back them for the title. That hasn't been the case, and I don't think that will be the case. So it limits their ceiling. It puts enormous responsibility on their core group to stay disciplined and consistent across those weekends. It needs them to address the issues you've just spoken about with Jamil Khan's chair. It needs Charlie Connolly to ensure that he's available for game weeks 4 and 5, and even the VARs as well. So right now, the gap feels manageable. And I think they have the capabilities to really Nottinghamshire and Manchester United. But if they are to maintain that level, maintain control, and capitalise on with those games in hand, they need to be fresh. They need to have numbers. So we shall see if we're assessing their fixtures in game weeks 4. They open against Man City before playing Hull and East Yorkshire, and then GBG Saracens. So a really kind fixture list to kick Saturday off before Leeds Dynamos and Nottingham Forest on Sunday. On paper, with all due respect, Ben, there should be no real upsets in and amongst that 5. If they don't come away with maximum points, it will be a disappointment. Certainly, if you used to ask any of the Teesside Steel players or coaches, it's game weeks 5. That is the interesting one. Incredibly interesting, because they go from Norwich City to Villa Rockets Lions to Manchester United to Baggies before ending with league leaders Nottinghamshire. So if they're going to do it, they've got to do it the hard way. But 30 games unbeaten for a reason. Can they extend that to 40 and be crowned champions? We shall see come the conclusion. Now, right next, in second, we've got Manchester United, who rise 5 positions in the standings after game week 3 from outside the automatic places to second. And they've done it with a statement weekend. 4-0 win against Villa Rockets Lions to begin with. Then another fantastic 4-0 win against Nottingham Forest. They edged Norwich City 1-0 in a tight tactical game, came from behind to beat GBG Saracens, and closed with a disciplined 1-0 win over West Bromwich Albion Baggies. 5 games, 5 wins, 13 goals scored, 1 conceded. Ben, give me your assessment. Was that the most complete weekend we've seen from any side this season? Maybe disregard Nottinghamshire in game week 1 because they were faultless, but beyond that point, is that the best we've seen a team perform across one game week?
I don't think it's up there. I think it might have been. I feel it's close, but I think Man United definitely. It's one of the most complete I've seen Man United play, with their especially their new signing Liam Fitzpatrick with his goal contributions. But David D in the middle, he's so hard to get past. It's like I said in one of the commentaries, he gets the ball on his wheel and he just takes it past you. It's like he's stuck to it. I think I feel like it would be hard for them to even draw a game. I think they're probably going to win most of their games. I think they could even win all of them, not just be unbeaten, but actually win every match. I think they're going to win the league, personally. I don't know if that's too early to say, but I think that's how good they are. I think Nottinghamshire are going to find it hard to keep that top spot, how Man United are playing at the moment.
Greg, people won't be able to see you, but you're very animated at some of the things that myself and Ben are saying. Give me your assessments, because you obviously have an opinion.
Oh, I'm all aboard the Man United promotion trade. Choo. They were staggering this weekend. After the first game, I went, you know what? Yeah, they're not going to lose another game this season, and they'll be automatic promotion. David D and Mason Davies, their connection already is ridiculous. Some of the football they played was top notch. The fact that they didn't start Liam Fitzpatrick in most of the games and could bring him on is a joke in the Championship, to be honest. They just were pretty much faultless. David D was exceptional, absolutely exceptional. And he will no doubt be thoroughly pleased with his stand-up player of the weekend. Award thoroughly deserved. I have had a bit of a joke and a laugh with him because he was, after the first game, he was like, "We are brilliant. We are unbelievable." Honestly, I'm surprised he could leave the hall because his head's just got so big. He needs humbling, that kid. But you know what? He's just developed into this standout player in the championship, and not only that, but a really lovely young man who loves the sport and does a lot for it. As you said, was part of the BBC pitch with you. So yeah, all aboard the Man United Grocery Charge. There is no stopping them.
I completely agree. I've got a massive soft spot for Manchester United and Altrincham for that matter. They're just such a well-run club. And we saw the pieces come together in game week 3. Didn't happen by accident either. In the prediction episode pre-season, I spoke about how pivotal David D will be, the importance of Josh Slack. We spoke about how smart the Laura Evans signing was, how Mason Davies, then a Altrincham PFC player, being one of the best young players in the country, not just the championship. And then they've brought in Liam Fitzpatrick, who historically is one of the best goal scorers in the division. That is serious recruitment. And let's go on to Liam Fitzpatrick, because against GBG Saracens on Sunday, he scored a hat-trick. He's 9th in the championship. That puts him joint 3rd on the all-time list for championship hat-tricks. Greg, I'll probably throw to you more so than Ben, because you've been around a little bit more. Can you hazard a guess as to the players that have scored more or comparable amount of hat-tricks as Liam Fitzpatrick? And I just want to say this is very much a Jeff the Ref stat, my favourite statistician coming through.
I knew you were going to ask for this. As soon as you mentioned,
Then you should have done your research.
there'll be a quiz coming here. Oh, my brain can't. It's 7:45 at night. I've had a long day. I can't even think. I'm trying to wrap my brain about longevity in the championship.
There is 6 names on my list that have either scored more or comparable amounts. Give me one of them.
My brain goes to long players that played a lot, like Mike Coleman. Mike Coleman, it's like I'm trying to think of players that have been in the championship for a while.
I will put you out your misery. Ryan O'Leary has 11. He is the leader in terms of hat-tricks scored in the championship. Christian Darlington and Dan Stevens have 10. Liam now sits alongside Kath Goldsborough, Dylan Kelsall and Jim Wright on 9. Liam Fitzpatrick becomes the 5th highest goal scorer in championship history with 81 goals, behind Jim Wright on 103, Dan Stevens on 102, Ryan O'Leary on 98, and Ricken Shah on 97. So huge congratulations to Liam Fitzpatrick. I want to ask you both a question, and that question is, as we conclude game week 3, jumping the gun slightly because we still have to reference and talk about Nottinghamshire, who do you regard as the best player of 25-26 in the championship division? I'll come to you first, Ben. When you, off the top of your head, who do you see as that top performer, the one that would go on to potentially lift the player of the season accolade?
I think for best, I think it'll probably be David D. I think even though there are lots of good players, I just think he's very consistent. He's pretty much always on the pitch. I think he always starts. He's always playing, and I think the other players that are very good, like Liam Fitzpatrick and Dan McKellen, they've not been in the league long enough to really, maybe, unless they do something amazing in the next 2 game weeks. I think just consistency with David D is what will get him there. I think maybe if I was going for a younger player, I would go Noah Stevenson-Lee, but I think he'll probably get young player of the season. So
I certainly wouldn't put it out the realm of possibility of him securing both. I don't think we've ever seen it. David D very nearly did it last season with Sale United, but 2 very good shouts. I mean, I tipped David D to lift it in my pre-season prediction episode. So maybe I do know what I'm talking about after all. But I also spoke about the likes of Naglis Montvillas and Josh Slack as well. Greg, who is the player of the season as of the 19th of February 2026?
Yeah, my quest to have someone humble David D is not going very well, is it? Because he's my shout as well. He's just become this pivotal creator for Manchester United, does it at both ends of the pitch. And so at the minute, I can't see anyone catching him. He's just the standout that is the player that Manchester United look to.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't disagree. It's fine margins for me. But at the conclusion of Game Week 3, my player of the season so far is Laura Evans.
Just, to be honest, shout.
We so often default to goal scorers, the hat tricks, the assists, the flair, the central players that dominate the ball and the narrative. But if you strip Manchester United back and look at what has changed most significantly in their system, it's her. She has given them complete control, given them a foundation to build on. She rarely overcommits. She's never rash. Her timing is excellent. Her positioning means United are rarely stretched in moments where they previously would have been. And just as importantly as she is at making decisions with the ball, it's the things she does off the ball that keeps them stable. She's a fantastic communicator, a fantastic leader. And that allows the likes of David, to both of your prediction, to thrive. She is the platform. And David, who is almost certainly listened to this in Abu Dhabi, will be the first to agree with that statement. And more broadly, I don't think defensive players get anywhere near enough recognition. We default to visible moments. It's the nature of football. It's the same with the running game, the goals, the clips, the headlines. But Laura is influencing games for 40 minutes, not just 5. And I think she should be in the Scotland senior squad. I was calling for it before the Euros and it didn't happen then, but it should now, because she automatically, for me, I will say it's my view, becomes their best defensive player. And the thought of a central pairing of Laura Evans and Tyler McClelland at international level is incredibly exciting and also incredibly balanced. Greg, am I getting carried away, or are we undervaluing just how important she is in that United system?
Absolutely not. Because you'll have seen my paragraph analysis when nominating Laura for my unsung player of the weekend. David D and Mason Davis rightly get the headlines, but she's the basis for all that. She's the calmness at the back, never really just at fault for anything, and manages to keep her concentration for the full 40 minutes when Manchester United are attacking a lot of the time. She's never involved in any of the sort of defensive play, and she's not afraid to bring the ball forward and turn defensive to attack. So yeah, that defensive partnership for Scotland with her and Tyler McClelland would be exceptional.
I just want to shine a spotlight on goalkeepers, to be honest, because they don't get it enough. I think of someone like Chris Gordon for years has been absolutely integral to West Bromwich Albion and England, but doesn't often get the headlines. We so often think of Marcus Harrison, we think of John Bolden, we think of the goals, the creativity, but Chris at club and country level underpins everything. And without him, the structure changes completely. And Laura is in that bracket. And it's something that I've repeated across this episode when saying some of my favourite players. We began with Fred Body, who I cannot stop raving about, Hannah Murgatroyd, Laura Evans, Isaac Murray. There is so many that we need to shine a spotlight on. And I if it is of interest and if we get enough buy-in, would people like to see a defensive player of the season, a different award, a different bracket that we can start to really recognise these crucial parts of teams. So no, Laura Evans would be mine, but overall, Manchester United absolutely faultless. And that's how you send a message. We have established that the title is not necessarily in their hands because of the games played, but they've all got to play each other in game weeks 4 or 5. And as said at the start, I don't see them losing another fixture. Now let's progress on to our final team. We're nearly there, gents. It's been nearly 2.5 hours. So a cracking effort from both of you. And it's the league leaders, as it has been from the very first game of the very first weekend. And it's Nottinghamshire. 31 points from their opening 13 games, unbeaten, 32 goals scored, just 1 conceded all season. That's a plus 31 goal difference. 12 clean sheets in a division we're saying is stacked with quality. And defensively, it's about as close as flawless as you will see. But the attacking side is where we need to discuss, because 22 goals of their 32 came in game week 1. Since then, across game weeks 2 and 3, they've scored a combined 10. That it's not necessarily a crisis, but it does suggest that the early fireworks, the early firepower have settled into something far more tame. And game week 3 repeated that. They beat Manchester City 2-0, professional and controlled. Then came the 0-0 draw against Leeds Dynamos and Altrincham. That now makes 4 goalless draws in their last 7 games. And Sunday's 3-0 win over Norwich City was important. It reminded everyone that when they lift that tempo, even against a stubborn side such as Norwich, they can overwhelm teams, they can punish teams. So just quickly on those 0-0 draws, it's not just Nottinghamshire. This wasn't a high-scoring weekend across the board. And Jeff the ref has told me this, that there were just 55 goals scored across the weekend, the lowest total ever at a National League Championship weekend. Can you believe that?
Not at all. But I did say at the beginning, this seemed like a weekend where some of the big teams their levels dipped a little bit, but none of the other big teams wanted to catch them up.
I obviously, we was talking across the weekend and texting, and we was talking about how significant shifts were, results were, performances were. You wouldn't then go to thinking that that was the lowest scoring National League weekend. I was absolutely gutted to be there. But if you had told me before the weekend started, it would be the lowest scoring weekend in history, I'd have been like, thank God. Because I never like to miss weekends, but that wasn't the case. The margins are just so much finer, but that's not a quality thing. It's just that people matching up against each other. And just on that point, the only ever time there have been fewer National League goals at a full weekend was in the Premiership in June 2022, when there were 49 goals scored. And that total is even more remarkable because in said weekend, there was a 10-goal game, Aspire 8, West Bromwich Albion Throssels 2, which massively inflated it. Take that out, nearly just shy of 40 goals. So we saw 6 goalless draws this weekend, equaling the record for a single National League weekend. So tight margins everywhere. Greg, is this the natural evolution of Nottinghamshire, a side that's built on defensive excellence, or do you think they need to rediscover a bit of that early season attacking bravery if they're to go and lift the trophy?
Yeah, I think they need to rediscover some sort of attacking impetus, because they're just in danger of being caught by teams like Manchester United and Teesside Steel that are carrying on their form. Manchester United look imperious this weekend, and yes, they have to carry that on, but they can't afford for Nottinghamshire for their levels to dip. We know defensively they are just incredibly hard to break down. That's why they have no defeats. And I honestly can't see them losing a game this season. I think both them and Manchester United will go the rest of the season unbeaten. Who knows, Teesside Steel could keep that going as well. We can have 3 teams go the rest of the season unbeaten. But they need to make sure they are being clinical and taking the chances they're creating. which I think was their issue this weekend. They were creating chances sometimes, but just weren't being clinical enough in those wide areas to bury the goals and find the back of that net as often as they need to, just to make sure that people realise and remember what they did in game week 1.
Ben, you're obviously so closely affiliated with Nottinghamshire as a club. Do you train together?
No, we don't train. We train separately, but in the same hall. We just play games at the end against each other.
Give me your assessment of them. Do you feel like you're trying to break down a wall in trying to score? And do you see them being struggling, in front of goal?
I think they've got a problem with scoring. I think they're very defensive and they are very hard to break down. When we play them as a team, we do generally only lose by like maybe 1 goal most of the time. And we do score against them. And I think they do have I think they'll get too many draws personally. They're very good at stopping goals and they don't lose, but they're not very good at when they're in their flow, they can score and they can move it around you. It's just, I think they're very defensive, and the way they play with Adam and Sam together, they kind of only really have one winger, because Adam and Sam, one of them will go on the wing, but they kind of play as a double middle. They always change up, and I think that's very good for defensive ability, but I think they struggle to score, and I think that's just going forward for them. I think they need to get less defensive and maybe take some risks. And they definitely can play, and they'll definitely, I think, will go back up to the Premiership if they win or come second. I think they're definitely going to go back up. I think it's just, will they be able to keep it till the end and win the league? I think Man United have a little bit more, and I think it will come down to that when they play Man United. I think whoever wins that, or if it's just a draw at 0-0, I think that will be the game.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, had you told me at the conclusion of game week 1 that Nottinghamshire would struggle to find the back of the net in game weeks 2 and 3, I would have said you were crazy, because they were unbelievable in game week 1, formidable. I've never seen anything like it, to the point where they were breaking records, 22 goals from the opening 4 games without reply. I thought it was going to be one of the most comprehensive campaigns we've ever seen in Championship, but they just haven't hit that same rhythm since. And if they are to go on to lift the title, they're going to have to take risks, even if it's at the detriment of their defensive shape, because we know how good they are defensively. The only question is, can this low scoring version we've seen in recent weeks be sustainable in the title race, or whether they'll need to rediscover the form, because defensively they built the platform. It's now whether they can add that edge and finish the job. Right, gents, that brings us to the end of, I think, episode 47, fast closing in on number 40, and we are just over 2.5 hours, so almost an apology to both of you two and our listeners, because that is a real chunk of time, but I think it's important that we discuss the important issues around Powerchair Football, around the National League, and shine a spotlight on all the players, on all the teams, irrelevant of where you are or what you're wanting to achieve. It's great to get together. A huge thank you to both of you. Always honest, insightful, properly balanced, and that's what makes these reviews work. It's easy to read results off a table. It's much harder to unpack the context around them, and that's what we try to do with these episodes. Of course, a massive thank you to MK Battery for continuing to power the podcast and back everything we're doing around the National League. Their support genuinely allows us to shine a light on the Championship and the Premiership for that matter in the way it deserves. Game week 4 of the Championship is scheduled for March 21st and 22nd, so get that penciled in now. Before that, though, we've got game week 3 of the Premiership coming up this weekend, so we'll be back next week for a full recap of that. Plenty to discuss there as well. As always, thank you for listening, thank you for supporting, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, Ben.
Yep, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Greg.
Cheers, Ryan. Cheers, everyone. Look forward to more of my voice of the weekend.